You've seen the headlines. We know that Canadians are taking on more and more debt. Household debt's reached almost $3 trillion. It's just a huge, huge number. And listen, I mean, houses are expensive and life is expensive. It's not surprising that debt is on the rise, but really, there are opportunities and needs for people to do something about it. And that's going to be the focus of this next conversation. Brandon Thonson is a credit counselor at Credit Canada, and he's here to talk about some of the big trends that he's seeing on the phone lines with clients at Credit Canada and some of the warning signs that you might want to look out for to see if there's more you need to do to get that debt under control. Hello, Brandon.
Hey Bruce, how are you?
What would you say about this broad assertion that household debt in Canada is getting worse? I mean, I can read the StatsCan numbers, but you're literally spending all day, every day, talking to real live humans.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you said, from the headlines, we know household debt is now 2.6 trillion. Point anything sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
But so on one hand, the headline is it's serious. You hear that amount. From a, I guess from a simplified standpoint, essentially it means Canadians owe $1.77 for every dollar they earn. So that's not sustainable, right? That's heavy leverage, and we can't ignore that. The cost of living has risen significantly. The food prices over the last 5 years have gone about 27%, 30%, which normally we see about 2% increase annually in food inflation. So that's huge. But at the same time, a lot of that debt is actually with a more stable group of individuals. So about 82% of the debt that we're seeing is with what would be considered low risk borrowers.
Hmm.
So people who can actually afford to pay the debt back. The biggest thing we're seeing is how this debt is being managed, especially in today's environment.
Say more about that. How are you seeing that debt be managed?
So to be honest, a lot of what we're seeing now is a kind of a layering effect. So people are taking more debt to service debt, right? So about 75% of household debt is tied to mortgages, right? Many of the homeowners who purchased during the pandemic are now renewing at higher rates, somewhere between 15 and 20%. That's a huge jump on a monthly payment, right? And you didn't necessarily fully stress test your budget for that type of change. So we have a mortgage that may have felt manageable a year ago, but now you add the growth or the interest rate change, the credit cards, lines of credit, car loans, you really start to feel that squeeze, right?
Yeah. What would you say you've noticed in terms of attitudes towards debt? And I say that because I think generationally there are certain observations we have about my dad, who grew up in World War II, has a very different relationship to it than my 16-year-old. Well, they don't have any debt yet, but certainly a very different relationship to money than my dad would have had back in the 1930s. What
Right.
what what would you say is evolving on attitudes?
So I think, well, one, right now, consumer confidence is at an all-time low, right? People are terrified. 21% of or not 21, excuse me, about 40% of Canadians are reporting that they're living close to insolvency every month, maybe just $200 away from that. So although the issues are dire, I see, and there's a lot of stigma around addressing the debt, I do see that people feel more empowered um, to actually have these conversations. So even internally here at Credit Canada, we've seen, I think, about a 39% increase in counseling requests, which tells us that people are actually reaching out, even if they don't know what to do, they're
Yeah.
trying to address the debt.
At least they're picking up the phone
Right.
because we can't help them if they don't call us and talk to us. There are those who do pick up the phone. There are those who think about picking up the phone, but they're, held back for whatever reason. What are some of the warning signs that you would say people should be watching out for, either for themselves, like looking at their own circumstances, or for
Right.
the people that they love?
Fair, that's a great question. So I think one of the warning signs that a lot of people don't even necessarily realize, because it happens silently, is living on credit. So what I'm noticing a lot on the ground level is people are filling income gaps and essentially using their debt to maintain lifestyles, right? So let's say you have a bill that goes on a credit card, the card gets partially paid when you get paid, but the balance never actually gets to zero. So you never actually clear it. You have this idea that you're on top of all of your finances and everything is being controlled, but a portion of that is subsidized by your credit or your debt. That's not sustainable. So I'm seeing a lot of people realizing when they're having these conversations with me that, hey, I haven't been as in control as I maybe thought I was.
Yeah. What would you say people should know about how this counseling session unfolds? Ring, ring, ring. Brandon answers, says hello. Where does it go from there?
That's a great question. So every call is obviously going to be different to an extent, but there's an anatomy of a conversation, right? We want to assess where you are, what you've done prior to having this conversation with us, because our main focus, and I truly don't just say this, is to help you get out of debt and back into life. It's our mandate, it's our focus. My background's in financial planning and social work, so I use those two. I know all of our counselors, that's the focus. Um, it's really a fact-finding opportunity and a chance for you to not only see where you are, but see those opportunities for getting out of debt and maybe some growth.
People carry a tremendous amount of shame, whether the debt is has anything to do with any action they took or not. They feel shame about that.
Right.
How do you address that, or maybe provide a salve for that, or some comfort around that?
Fair, fair. That's a great question again, Bruce, because at the end of the day, it's a very difficult conversation to have. You call a stranger on the phone, no matter what that person sounds like, you don't know them. So the first thing is making sure that they feel heard, that they understand that I'm not trying to sell them. We're not selling them anything. We're not salesmen at Credit Canada. We're not collection agencies. We are genuinely Canadians invested in Canadians getting out of debt. So some of that is sharing my own story. Some of that is listening while maybe I'm just a sounding board. But every conversation takes on its own anatomy, essentially, takes on its own shape.
I love that you mentioned your own story. It's a reminder that we're all humans. No one's perfect. What is it that you find resonates when you talk about the path Brandon has walked, and what you have learned?
I think for the individuals that I speak with, I hope that there's a genuineness that they can hear in my voice. But outside of that, my own personal journey, like I went back to school for financial planning because of my own gaps, my own lack of understanding around money. So I've always understood that, or I feel like I just show that I understand that you're not necessarily calling me for a financial education. You don't want to be a financial planner. You just want to be able to plan your finances, right? So just meeting you where you are and helping you get to where you need to be.
There are a couple of, so in addition to all that and all the critical stuff about listening and validation, being non-judgmental and all that, there are solutions that Credit Canada can provide for people or recommend for people.
Absolutely.
Take us through the top three or four like actions that someone might choose to take after a conversation or a couple of conversations with a credit counselor. What are some things that they could consider?
Fair. So the first, and I guess the what most people are calling us for, because they don't realize how much we actually can help them with, is our debt consolidation program. So if you've gotten to a place where the debt is completely unmanageable, you've maybe exhausted all other options, a debt consolidation program may be the option for you to avoid going down a consumer proposal, a bankruptcy, or losing those assets that so many of us want to protect, right? Our homes, right? Um, so that's the main crux of what we do. But outside of that, your first option is always to speak with your financial institution.
Yeah.
Always see what options they do have, because a closed mouth will never be fed, right? So speak with them
I
first.
like that.
speak with us, give me a call at Credit Canada, and let's explore them. But always start with your financial institution, start with a trusted credit counselor, and maybe a financial planner would be a great
Yeah.
option.
Yeah. And Credit Canada also has great relationships on the mortgage refinance front. And for those who need a consumer proposal, we can make
Absolutely.
referrals. And
Absolutely.
also a financial coaching program called Gold.
Yeah, gold's another great option,
Yeah.
especially for that budgeting piece.
Yeah. Really helpful stuff. Brandon, thank you for your insight today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Bruce.
Brandon Thonson is a credit counselor at Credit Canada. He was here to talk about this like broad snapshot of what's going on in household debt in this country and what specifically you can do about it.